So Adrian, good to be back chatting again. This time we're talking about something different. This time we're talking about your new ebook. So could you explain the title of it and what it means?
So it's how to raise 100 million for charity. It is, I think it's just about doing something bigger and raising more in the long term. So there's lots of stuff around about how to raise a few million or how to improve something by 5%. This is like, right, if you really want to make a difference to a particular cause, how to go about that.
So the title is very catching because it's 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
So where did that figure come from?
So we've raised 122 million in 6 years off one breakthrough. But that breakthrough only came after years and years of smaller breakthroughs.
Okay.
So that's the inspiration for the whole thing, is like, you need to keep trying things, you need to keep learning small things, and eventually you'll get somewhere worth going.
So the 123 million that your company has raised for charities, can you give us a kind of rough idea what type of charities or what kind of breakdown? Like, is it mostly Europe? Is it mostly one type of charity?
I'd say 100 million in the UK, the rest in Ireland, the US, a little bit in Norway. A lot of health charities. A lot of the charities now are charities that have traditionally done well for events and challenges, but previous to that, and particularly during COVID, I worked for loads of different causes, because when something new comes along, it's like the Wild West, it's like everything works. All the challenges worked for all the brands, because it was so new, there was so much demand, and now it's kind of settled down to a more mature market.
So do the tactics then have to change? As it kind of settles?
It becomes more nuanced over time. So you really have to start learning about, okay, what audience want to do what challenge for what cause.
Okay.
The nuance that you didn't need at the start to do well, you do need now to do well and succeed, if you get me.
So just to bring you back, at the beginning there, you said about it was a series of small breakthroughs that led to the bigger breakthrough. Can you talk us through just some examples of the smaller breakthroughs, and then, of course, the bigger one, which is where you are today?
Going back to even when we worked on Facebook content together in Concern Worldwide, like how to put something in the newsfeed that people can actually consume into their brains. It's like, it really has to be short, and you really need in the first sentence start making sense to them. There's no time for puns or being clever. You need to be straight to the point. So loads of learnings from having organic posts do well, and how clear and crisp they needed to be. Where you remove every word and the post gets better and better, like the least amount of words possible.
Yeah.
One example, like email marketing, for example. I used to do a lot of that before I worked in the charity sector for Full Tilt Poker and for Concern, where we worked together, and just understanding that a plain text email is better than a HTML email. Emails need to go out straight. That would be a learning on its own, is how email works. But even I did an event for an Irish charity called On the Dry. It was no alcohol in January challenge. Did terribly, really failed badly. But I learned that the emails that get opened, basically when someone signs up for an event, the open rate's unbelievable in the first few hours. It's 50%. And then it doesn't really matter how many emails you send them, that email rate drops over time. So the key is automate the email journey, email them early. And those learnings from those failed challenges all kind of built up and led to one breakthrough. But the one I want to mention is we worked on donation forms together in Concern, and that experience of, like, again, making it simple, removing fields, seeing how many more people actually converted when you took out unclear text, confusing language, additional fields, just cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back. Like, that was all crucial.
So those breakthroughs, they build over time, you gain more knowledge over time, and then that leads you then to bigger understandings of what's going on.
Yeah, you learn more about human behavior, you learn more about how people use devices, and you are, because you're out on the edge trying things and changing things and measuring how they work, you're learning more about people and their behavior, and you're learning things that other people don't know.
Right, and so that brings me to some of the inner workings of charities. So some of the things you mentioned there are small breakthroughs, say reduction of fields on donation forms, better understanding of email marketing. For some charities that might be watching this, those roles and responsibilities are probably spread out over lots of different teams, and maybe they work in a charity where everything works together, but in lots of charities the teams mightn't work very well together. Is this something you've come across? And if people listen to this saying, oh yeah, well that's grand that he can talk about it, but in our charity this group doesn't work with that group, is there ways of working around those kind of internal conflicts that might arise from something as easy as simplifying a donation form?
So it is undoubtedly easier for a freelancer, which I was at the time, or an agency of a team who can pull together into one room to do this. Now, it's hard for everyone to sort of categorize and record learnings and build on them. That's difficult even for anyone. In a charity internally, it's definitely harder because of course you're right. Like there's different teams, different priorities. Everyone's busy, everyone's emailing, everyone's on loads of calls. The solution is a centralized record of learnings or things that have worked surprisingly well or surprisingly badly. So what we do for our internal process, and which I would encourage a charity to do, is have, say, an annual process, or however often you do it, a process where you have your learnings, you record them. Say we're in a room together, you have them on post-it notes, you put them up on a big wall, and you let the team sort of come up with ideas, but they have to use the learnings as building blocks. So treat each surprising learning as a building block and try to put them together to extrapolate forward and find something new where you wouldn't expect to get to something unexpected that can work. That basically that takes you away from brainstorming, which isn't that effective. Top of your head isn't that good. You want to be down in actual real life learnings. And for an organization, that's just time. That's just having a process every year where you've booked certain people are in a room, someone's done the work in advance, someone's got the post-it notes or the building blocks or the slides or whatever it is on a wall or in a deck, and then you can go through them, pull them together and try and come up with something new and try and come up with a new way forward.
So that reminds me of roles within charities. And there's a line in your book that I just wanted you to kind of explain to us because it's quite controversial. It says, your job is not to guarantee that every project that you work on raises money. So for fundraisers, they'll be saying, what? So how do you explain that to them?
Well, first of all, most of the projects you work on should make money, but not every one of them. So 90% of what you do should be really proven, profitable, excellent use of your donor's money. But if we're saying that absolutely every project has to fundraise, has to raise money, and the only goal is that, then that leads to conservatism, lack of risk-taking, lack of innovation, just putting out the most predictable, proven thing all the time. And unfortunately, that is the expectation and the norm for most people in fundraising. It's like, if it's not raising money, it's evil, it's bad, it's gone, it's cut. So I'm trying to challenge that by saying your job isn't to raise money with every project. You should have some things in your calendar that don't work and that you learn from, while also balancing that with plenty of excellent fundraising activity alongside that, because you need to stay in the game, you need to keep your head of fundraising on side, keep your head of finance on side in the long term, because you're not going to get that breakthrough in the next 6 months.
So do you think that sometimes if a charity has been very good traditionally on a certain way of fundraising, in some ways, even though that becomes a foundation for their performance, it can also hinder their future if they're only doing the same thing and they're afraid to try something else because it mightn't raise the exact same amount of money?
Yeah, if everyone expects money all the time, and you can become a victim of your own success. So like any industry, the smaller guys have nothing to lose, so they're more willing to try things. If you've developed a culture where everyone's like, look, it's not worth our time unless we're bringing in a lot of money. Let's just do the thing that brings in a lot of money, and let's be really mature, and let's be really on it, and make sure everything raises money. And that's what the head of finance expects. Then, it is hard to break that culture. But the time will come where you need to,
Yeah. So what factors do you think force people into making those decisions that they have to try something new?
Like it does all come down to income, That's the only thing that drives projects forward is income. There's nothing else. And some people believe in that the better way is possible and others don't. So there's different levels of willingness. Another thing that really drives change very effectively is seeing other charities do it. So I think some people are kind of more visionary folks, have the idea that they should go first already and they benefit. So if you're the first mover and you're the first one to do something new that other charities aren't doing, or the second mover or the third mover, like, it's fantastic.
There's an advantage to that.
Yeah. If you see it once, you kind of, it stays with you, like. So you kind of, back in 2017, I was trying lots of things and not really getting anywhere meaningful. And we had two things that worked really well around the same time. One was petitions and one was the challenges stuff. And just seeing the level of income, like, it changes your perception. Like, you understand why you battle through all those failed campaigns to get there. And once you've seen what a new market looks like, a new market opportunity, it does change your perspective.
And could you just give us an example, obviously without having to name names because of confidentiality, but an example of...
I'll name names.
Okay. An example of somebody that you've worked with, say, recently, one of your kind of best results, just to give people a sense of perspective on what kind of numbers we're talking about.
I spoke to Dementia UK yesterday, and for their May challenge...
Dementia UK?
Yeah. For their May challenge, they've made £50,000 already, and it's only been up a week. £750,000 target. We're still bringing in that. This year we made 900 grand on a skipping challenge in the UK. 300,000 or 400,000 challenges, lots of those still happening in the UK. We've a skipping challenge in Ireland this month, which is going to bring in €500,000 in Ireland, which is a small market. So, it's still happening. There's still a lot of income. We just have to be really... Yeah, so we're still reaping the rewards of a breakthrough in 2018 today, like.
So when we were talking about that earlier, you mentioned a few key people who have influence within charities that need to be part of the decision, or at least part of it. The agreement in what direction you're going to. And in the book is an amazing part of it, and it starts off by saying your head of finance is wrong. Mm-hmm. Are you sure about that?
Yeah, for sure. Like, so they have too much sway. They have a moral argument of spending money, and you can actually predict what a head of finance will say and think in a charity. They'll have come from some for-profit background, and their attitude is, I'm going to make sure this charity is spending their money well. And they're detailed guys and girls, so they go for every single penny, every single euro, and make sure it's been spent well. And that, it just eradicates risk and innovation, research and development, new ideas, because everything's on a budget line in an Excel sheet, and everything is judged with the kind of idea of, well, how much are we really making on this? Are we making a 3-to-1 ROI? Are we making a 4-to-1 ROI? How is this going to look in the annual report? And nobody questions the head of finance, because he's the head of finance or she's the head of finance in a charity. And they might be right in that meeting when they say that's not making enough money, we need to cut that. They might be right at the end of the year when the annual report is done and it looks more efficient and there's an appropriate spend on everything. But in the long run, 5-6 year timelines, they're wrong, because they're not accounting correctly for what actually leads to raising money. They're not accounting for the knowledge built along the way. They're not accounting for the learnings. They're just looking at income in a 12-month period. And that's the wrong metric. That's the wrong time period. Not just for charities. You see the same stuff. You look at Microsoft, totally changed their window. They started measuring differently for new products. They're looking at like 36 months or 48 months measurement. So accountants generally are wrong. But certainly when they join a charity with the pressure to, I'm going to make sure every penny is spent correctly, which is a really good intention and makes total sense for their profession, it harms innovation. So
would it be correct to say that we're adding a value to the things that are learned in the campaigns or the projects that might make money initially, but we're giving them that a value that will then pay off in the future?
Yeah, we're hoping to give them some kind of value. We're hoping that the people on the call can see the value. Now, they won't believe it's really valuable until some income arrives, but there's no other way. If you go back to things that I did, I broke even for 6-7 years in the charity sector overall. Do you know what I mean? And then suddenly, load of income. So Did the initiatives that didn't make money and were cancelled or switched off, or we said we'll never do that again in 2016 and 2015 and 2014, how do you account for those learnings when you've got billions now in income from the Facebook challenges thing globally? And it's a challenge. It's a challenge to do that. But if you've got a record and you can show, we have actually got learnings here, we are getting somewhere, then at least you have something written down, it looks professional, you've got a process. And all you need to do is protect some budget to keep, a small percentage of your budget in the corner. So it's not like you're spending tens of millions on this. It's something you can do relatively cheaply compared to the overall income you stand to bring in.
And so obviously this is where you come in, because you have a database full of things that yourself and your team have learned over many years and across many charities. And that's what I see as one of the many values that you bring, but one of the biggest ones is that you have all those things documented.
Yeah, we record our learnings and we keep trying new stuff. So it's all iterative. And I know these are kind of cliches, but we review our campaigns in real detail. We try to get to clear, crystallized learnings. We watch out for things that surprise us, because surprise indicates that we didn't know the world worked like this. And the whole goal is to learn more about the world works and learn unique, unexpected things that other people don't know.
So surprises should be like a treasure that we're trying to find.
Yeah, or an easy way to think about a big, complicated, ugly digital campaign. So you've got numbers and, an uninspiring review with figures, and you want to be like, well, what surprised us? Which bit were we like, I didn't know that worked like that? Or what changed? Or what was our worldview beforehand? And what was it afterwards? Because the easiest thing in the world to do after a campaign is to sort of post-rationalize and go, well, yeah, well, obviously people want to do skipping. You're like, but, I didn't know as many people want to do skipping challenges as do. I still can't believe it. So recording what surprised you is a good way of keeping track of that, because over time you forget, you assimilate new information into your worldview and you kind of move on with that. That's what the human brain does well.
So that's a good tactic for people to take away immediately, is that when they're reviewing the campaigns, one of the criteria should be that question of what surprised us, because maybe that's been talked about before. Maybe people have discussed it as the campaign is going on, but it's not recorded. It's not part of the review process. The review process tends to be quite fixed from what I can remember.
Yeah. And you can do a review process, that looks professional and everything. You just need to take the surprising learnings, be it a list of bullet points somewhere. It could be a spreadsheet. But if you think of that wall full of post-it notes at the end of the year, what we look at is things that work surprisingly well, things that work surprisingly badly. One post-it note, you write it down in simple language, but it's an insight you can use to build new products.
So just going back there, we were talking about, you mentioned there that you don't have to spend a massive amount of your budget on what some people might see as risky, but other people would see as new, innovative, kind of new ways of raising money. Yeah. In your book, you're saying that there's a compromise that maybe sounds very specific, 7.5% of your budget. So explain why 7.5. Because
when you look at the biggest companies in the world, Apple, Toyota, Microsoft, some of them spend as high as 15%. But if you look at the biggest 20 companies in the world, 7.5% is about the middle.
Okay.
It's also from dealing with charities and dealing with head of fundraising, head of finance people, about what I think they can tolerate or hide into their overall ROI for the year. So you can spend 7.5%, fail, and then at least still have a positive ROI for the year. So there's a balancing act there. But look at any big company, look at any major global corporation, and they will have 5% to 10% of their budget on 5 to 15% of their budget on innovation, new things that might not work. So I don't understand how charities are supposed to develop new products without spending money on research and development. How do Toyota get a new car? Are they supposed to just?
I'm wondering, is it dependent on their position in the market? So the smaller charities sometimes tend to copy what the bigger ones are doing, and the bigger ones are maybe copying what the bigger ones are doing, because there's always someone bigger. And the very biggest ones, they probably are spending the money on trying new things.
There are some of the forward-thinking, very biggest ones who have product development, new product managers, product development teams, but they're still very much the minority. It was amazing to eventually get to the kind of big charities in the UK and see that those people were there. But that's actually quite a new development, and it's almost only in the UK. The tiny charities, small one-man bands, very hard to carve out the time to spend on things that might not work. It actually comes down to resources, because you're reacting to what's coming in. You know, there's lots happening. But 7.5%, you can take with a pinch of salt. You know?
Yeah.
The point is, do something in the entire year. Have something in your calendar that you've budgeted for conservatively, you've put in lower than you're expecting, and you're saying to whoever, your CEO, whoever it is internally, we're going to do one thing in the year that's experimental, and we're going to learn.
I'm wondering, is it a case of maybe using different language around it? Because we've been talking about those newer things as failing, but then we're also talking about within that, there's loads of things that are valuable that we learn, that build into the future and improve things. It reminds me of John Kavanagh, the great MMA coach, and his book is called Win or Learn. You know, so it's the idea that even in, you know, losing isn't losing if you're learning from it. That kind of strikes me about this as well.
Yeah, and you know, you're a forward-thinking digital man. That's how I think. But when you go to work for, domestic violence charity, and people have donated to help women who need to get out of a difficult situation, the pressure to spend that money weighs really heavily on the people who care about the cause. And most people in fundraising, it sort of holds them back, because any money that's spent badly, they feel it. Like,
yeah, of course.
I had that in Concern.
Yeah,
flew to Africa to do a campaign that didn't work, to shoot a video for a campaign that didn't work, and like you feel the moral weight of the money spent, and that, because the type of people who commit their lives to working for charities really care about the cause, that is an issue. And when a campaign doesn't bring in money, everyone feels the pressure. We feel the pressure on the agency side. The manager's like, there's a little bit of hand wringing. Could we have done this better? There's a lot of hand wringing. So it's emotionally difficult. Which
is a very unique position, because in a lot of companies, something might fail and the person's like,
yeah. If you've got a forward-thinking owner, entrepreneur who's like, listen, I want to invest, I want to try new things, we want to grow, we want to be ambitious, we want to break things, it's easy. You can say, it's his money.
Yeah, and they don't have that emotional, moral link to it, which I totally understand. Because so many people working in charities, they're so committed to the cause that they're working for.
And they hate not making money. They feel like their whole existence and their whole career is to fundraise, which is fine.
So what we're saying here, though, is we're just saying to stretch out the timeline of assessment. So we're not saying, look, get your 7.5% and just flush it down the toilet. Look, that's what we're in, and if it works, it works. We're actually saying, take your 7.5% of your budget, try something new, but try and assess it over a much longer period of time. So maybe the thing that doesn't immediately bear fruit might bear fruit because you add it to a campaign in 2 years' time, 3 years' time.
Yeah. Or the fifth thing you tried worked, and there was some learnings from the third thing and the first thing that led to the fifth thing. Yeah. And the second thing and the fourth thing did nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's all then about getting that buy-in internally, so that when it doesn't work, it doesn't have a 4-to-1 ROI, that people don't turn around and go, listen, you need to cut that. And then selling yourself on it, so that when you're busy next year, you don't just go, we might just kind of half do or skip that thing we were meant to do in October, that one experimental thing. We're really busy. Someone's on holidays. Will we just not do it? Put the budget somewhere else.
So do you think that's where Get Your Story Straight comes in? You know, is that you can do those, you know, you can do the big money-making campaigns, and you can also then take a lot of the pressure off the people who are within the charity under pressure that mightn't have the time to try, you know, to the other parts of the equation as well.
That is what we do, and we do almost insist on our clients doing something experimental in the calendar. But even for our clients, for everyone, the challenges are the same. You know, even if you're working with us, there's still shortage of resources, you know, pressure on the budgets.
Yeah.
And it's that long-term commitment to making it happen, like even for yourself to just have the resolve to go again. Because when a campaign does badly or 2 campaigns do badly, you kind of want to just forget about it, push it away, and do the stuff that works. So everyone's smiling and happy and has good endorphins. But like, it's just thinking strategically, saying, look, we're going to continue to test new things even if they don't work, and keeping going. Like,
would you mind talking about a charity that has done amazing work and transformed itself from when you and I worked with them, Women's Aid? Mm-hmm. Because that's, you've worked close with them for a long time, and just talk us through some of the transformation you've seen with, in terms of budget and like where they've gone.
A great example of someone taking risks, like Christina Sherlock, basically a one-woman band, like doing comms and fundraising for a charity that was bringing in something, below 100 grand a year in terms of fundraising, various other income streams. But she approached me at an event, took a risk on a few digital campaigns, happened to be there early on at the start of Facebook challenges, was bringing in hundreds of thousands during COVID, still bringing in hundreds of thousands now on campaigns, had some amazing years, grew the database, got lots of new fundraisers in the door, but crucially grew their team. So I think she has 7 on her team now. So it's gone from just her to 7 people working for her. When I started working with her, she was packing the t-shirts herself in the attic. So it was like this abandoned room in the top of their building where they used to go up and pack t-shirts themselves. Now, obviously, they got a fulfillment house to send out t-shirts for challenges, and now that's their office. So the team are in the office. The whole attic is remodeled. They've got a bathroom and a kitchen, and it looks really bright and modern. And it's just a different organisation, like different possibilities. And even the brand awareness from having millions and millions of brand impressions in Ireland has really helped them. Like,
and I've seen their t-shirts, I've seen their gear at some of my own events.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, I know that. For me, when I hear that story, where it ultimately goes, I think, is that they're able to do more of their incredible work.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's ultimately where this is all going.
Oh, absolutely. And if she didn't care so much, she's there 15 years. She's someone by calling, like she's an advocate, like it's a vocation. She wouldn't have taken the risks unless she was trying to really help women, and she was determined to stop women being killed in Ireland. Like that's what drove the success. That's what drove the risk taking, and that's why they've got probably outgrown every charity in Ireland in terms of growth in the last 5 years.
Wow, that's quite impressive. And
the vision is important, because like if you're just trying to make an extra 50% next year, you won't do bold things. You won't take massive risks. Do you know what I mean? If you're really, really trying to cure hunger, cure cancer, whatever it is, they are massive initiatives. You're talking about huge social change, and you need to have significant fundraising breakthroughs where you find something that other people don't know how to do. And the only way to do that is to take risks and learn, and then, benefit, monetize that.
So how do people keep the vision alive in the midst of their day-to-day working?
But that's a challenge for everyone. It's a challenge for even our tiny agency. Just trying to work that back into the minutiae of every day, like that's a challenge for every organisation all the time. But you have to just find ways to bring that money back to the cause. We're all fundraisers, we're all good at money handles, reminding ourselves what $1 million actually means.
Yeah, when you and I used to work for Concern many years ago, it was on the wall. Like, there was this big wall partition in the office, and they actually had the vision of Concern written on the wall. And oftentimes I remember just sitting there, and you're like looking around, and you read it again, and it energize a person because of course there's always difficult situations in any type of workplace, but keeping that vision alive is so important.
Yeah, and you can see it in the charities where the cause is on the same property as the fundraising offices. So Dogs Trust in Dublin, Laura Lynn in Dublin. You can feel the difference when you go there. I think it impacts the creativity of the team, and it seems to I think it impacts retention. The teams are more committed, they stay for longer, they have more ideas because they can see the cause. It's outside the window. When
you and I were in Dogs Trust years ago, that's probably the best example of that. There's dogs in the office, there's dogs everywhere. I know that doesn't work for everybody, but
no, but in terms of just keeping the vision and the impact of that, it's huge. Like, yeah, puppy comes in and they throw it up to the fundraising office for a while. to get the guys to mind it until the team downstairs can look after the puppy. Like, it's incredible.
It's another great charity that you're working on. And can you give some examples from your work with the Dogs Trust, how they used your approach as well?
We did the first dog walking challenge with them, which was interesting. We had a breakthrough on walking and running challenges, and we wanted something that fitted Dogs Trust. We didn't know if dog walking challenges would work. They didn't know, but it seemed to fit their cause, and we actually didn't really understand. It's the third challenge we did, really how this worked for different causes, how different challenges worked. And we did the first dog walking challenge in the world, as far as I know, in terms of these virtual challenges, and worked for their audience, was something they could do easily in their area with their dog, connected to the cause. Perfect. And they made a $250,000 on the first one. But in the UK, it's incredible. Like we're still making hundreds of thousands of pounds now on dog walking challenges in the UK. They've raised God knows how much money globally. And I mean, totally genuinely with you, we only did dog walking because Dogs Trust wanted a challenge and wouldn't have done walking or running. Didn't know if there was a market for it, didn't know if there was, how big that market would be. And it turns out it's huge.
What an example, because when we're sitting here talking about it, it makes complete sense that the challenge for Dogs Trust would be walking the dog.
Yeah.
That's the luxury of looking back at it retrospectively. And it comes back to lots of the things that we were touching on earlier, that willingness to try the unknown thing and where it takes you then. Because now this is obviously, why wouldn't they? It makes total sense that that's what they do.
Yeah, and everyone who's seen endless dog walking challenges in their newsfeed knows there's a market for it. They've seen thousands of people in Facebook groups. It's so obvious after the fact.
Yeah.
But when I pitched that to them, I wasn't sure, and I wasn't opening the Facebook ads on the first day with a smile on my face. I was like, oh my God, is anyone going to want to do this? So that's where you should be, because that means you're trying something that could potentially be amazing.
Yeah.
And the first dog walking challenge we did in the UK, took the learnings from Dogs Trust in Ireland. It was maybe our fifth challenge in total. They spent £30,000 on ads and raised £2 million.
Holy moly. That's some result.
Crazy.
So the few things jump out at me there. Firstly is, we've been talking a little bit, maybe one-sidedly, about, taking your 7-point-something% of your budget, trying risky things. All the language has been risky, might fail. But the flip side of that is, like you've described, it mightn't fail. It might be some spectacular result that you haven't thought about yet. So that's the flip.
Absolutely.
That's the, we can talk about the same thing in very different kind of languages. And I think we spent the first bit talking about it in conservative language.
Yeah.
And now when you give that example, it just shows the potential. All unknown things have potential in them, and there is a great example of it. Yeah,
and if it sounds like a good idea, it's probably not a good idea. So if someone comes to you with a business idea and it sounds like a good idea, it's probably a bad idea, because 1,000 other people have already thought of it, or 400 people have already thought of it, and there's 10 people doing it really well in your country.
Yeah.
If it's something weird and off to the side that you've never even considered, and I won't say bad ideas are good ideas, but but
it's something they hadn't thought about yet.
Exactly. Because people generally have the same sort of, that's why brainstorming is bad, because people have the same kind of general off the top of their head ideas. It's when you get down into the unexpected depths. What one of the people I like in Silicon Valley says is that really good ideas are adjacent to good ideas.
Yes.
So you go to one good idea and actually you find something amazing just past that, or just off
beyond
to the side.
it.
Yeah.
Brings me back to Jesus Christ, a long time ago. Let's say before Facebook ads were so easily accessible, when creative agencies would pitch to charities about, things that they felt were sure would work. And it was nearly always about certainty. This is definitely going to work. And as you said, they nearly always didn't work. But now with the advent of ads online as we know them, we can use them as a tool to test these things before we commit to a massive campaign.
Absolutely. And £500 will do it. In terms of ad spend, if you want to test a challenge for a charity, or really any product for a charity, like you need, we say £1,000, $1,000, €1,000.
So talk us through that. So let's say £500 sterling, €700, whatever it is, and somebody's sitting there saying, okay, but you're saying to test it. Talk us through the steps of doing that.
Okay, so say for a challenge, we've done this 20 or 30 times, 20, 30 different challenges where we spent £500, let's say £1 for the UK, signed up 300 or 400 people. So we have to have really strong ads. You need to sign up a certain volume of people, let's say a few hundred people. Once you sign up 300 or 400 people for a new challenge, the conversion rate to fundraising and the average raised will actually stand up as you scale. So say you test 3 challenges side by side, you spend £500 on each, which we used to do. You'll get a sense for which one is the most demand, which one is the cheapest signups, which one converts best to fundraising, and which one has the highest average raised. And those things will be true. You will learn that for just £500. So rather than spending tens of thousands on some new concept, there's simply no reason not to test 5 concepts side by side for, 5,000. Find one that works and then spend the budget on that one.
And so what you found is that the things you learn from those tests, the campaigns, still stick as you scale it.
Yeah.
So if this one over here is the one that brings in the highest conversion rate of people getting involved in the challenge, that's going to stay as you scale.
Yeah. Or certainly you'll see which one is the best if you test 3 things. And if you find something really exciting, it will be exciting at £1,000 and it will still be exciting at £10,000 media spend.
Okay, so that's a great first. So if somebody is watching this and they're in a position that we described, fully committed to the cause that they're working for, want to do the best they can for it, but are stretched, maybe time-wise, stretched resources-wise, and they're trying to find that breakthrough fundraising thing that will take them from where they are now to this big jump in income. There's a great way to do it. Just start
Absolutely.
there.
And find a gap in the calendar, say we're going to spend £500 on a new idea, then get your team together and say, right guys, we're going to test a new idea. And I guarantee you, the marketing people and the fundraising people, or whoever you bring to that call, who are constantly under pressure to raise money, if you say, look, pressure's off, let's just come up with the best idea we can and spend £500 on it, they'll love it. They'll love the process. They'll be fascinated on day one. It'll be a brilliant thing for the team. They won't leave between then and the test because they'll want to see what happens. It's just a totally unexpected side of things as well, where the team will love that experience. Yeah. And when we brought out that, we used to call it the wildcard product of testing 3 challenges side by side, the people, we said, right, you have to do one of these this year. We kind of insisted in the contract, right, we won't do all the big challenges for you unless you do one of these. The teams were delighted. They were so interested. They were so excited.
So what do you think changes it? What do you think makes it so exciting for people?
They want to test things, fundamentally. Most people who work in this space or in some kind of communications, fundraising, marketing role want to test new things. They want to find out more. They want to see what works. It's just the fear gets in the way. So you take the fear away of getting in trouble, having awkward meetings with your boss, having to explain a bad result, and you say, we're just going to try this. And everyone's fascinated. Nearly everyone.
Yeah. And you get great results then, because you learn so much from it.
You don't always get great results. You get results.
Yeah.
You can rule out things. But it's clear, when we did a gardening challenge and the cost per sign up was amazing. We had 30p, unbelievable Facebook group, expert gardeners sharing tips with first time young gardeners, but just fundraising wasn't there. So people didn't want to ask their friends for money to garden 30 minutes a day for 30 days, But that's a learning like.
So that gave you an insight into gardeners and beyond that.
It gave us a learning into, some events actually don't work for this. People are unwilling to ask their friends to donate to certain things. I know, in that case, we should definitely have picked that one up again since and tried a £25 register for the gardening challenge up front. There were some people who fundraised, just not enough.
Just not enough. So, and that idea of kind of learning from an idea that maybe didn't go in the direction you wanted, but coming back to it again, is that something you use again?
Yeah, all the time. Because again, there was a surprising learning in that, which was more people want to do a gardening challenge. putting gardeners into a Facebook group and having the expert gardeners kind of show off and show their tips, or the expert gardeners love to answer the questions of newbie gardeners.
Yeah.
Like, that's not something you sit down and go, I know what'll happen if we do a gardening challenge. But the group was amazing.
And then it's finding the right way for them then to fundraise.
Yeah, and there's still learnings that we have that haven't paid off yet.
Yeah. So they go into your database of learnings. They go into your
big long list.
valuable list. In the book as well, you talk about something that caught my eye, which is the charity sector isn't growing. Why do you say that?
Because it isn't growing. It's 2% GDP for like 200 years flat.
Okay.
US, UK, it isn't growing. The tech sector grows every year. Many sectors expect to grow and talk about growth. And as a sector, the charity sector doesn't grow. And the reason is we don't test enough new things. We're too conservative. We're still relying on tactics that worked in the year 2005 for the bulk of their acquisition. And I can't think of any other reason for it. And we have a trend in society where people are, more socially aware. There's more, even say, if you could track and measure virtue signaling, there's more of that. People are genuinely more interested in the world and selflessness. Yet the charity sector isn't growing.
So you could put it down to lack of innovation, or just trying to keep. As we went back to like that emotional tie to the commitment and not wanting to make mistakes.
It's absolutely. It's budgeted. Innovation is budgeted out of it. It's just, can we get money in this year? Can we get money in this quarter? Can we hit our target this quarter and keep everyone happy in the big serious senior management meeting or whatever meeting is hanging over the head of fundraising's head? It's a simple problem, but it's a huge problem. And if you just look around at the number of innovative breakthroughs, very few. Go to a conference, you'll have a lot of very tactical stuff. And then the opportunity is, which we've proved, there are opportunities just sitting there.
Yeah.
We took Facebook birthday fundraisers that were sitting there unused, and billions has been raised through it. A whole market category of virtual challenges that was just sitting there. People who wanted to do something for charity, liked the idea of fundraising for charity, willing to ask their friends, just hadn't been offered something that was of interest to them.
So the lack of growth is actually a massive opportunity.
Yeah. I had someone email me once and say, I'm so glad this Facebook challenges thing have come along. I've been doing events for charities for 20 years and my programs haven't changed in 20 years. We're still doing the same table quizzes, London Marathon stuff we were doing 20 years ago. That doesn't happen in any other sector. Like, these businesses should have died a long time ago because they haven't innovated, but they're kept going through goodwill and people are affected by the cause. So that's what I'm doing with my life. I'm looking for the next breakthrough because I know it's there and I know the opportunities are there.
So it's quite a unique position for charities to be in. The lack of growth in a way is a huge opportunity because, as you said, it's not like the opportunities don't exist or the breakthroughs don't exist. They just haven't been used yet.
Yeah, there's not enough people looking for them.
And that is another incentive for the smaller, kind of stretched teams that, it's there. We just have to find it.
Yeah. And if you want to actually, help everyone. I spoke to someone last week and their goal is to help everyone in the UK who has a stroke. If you're talking about doing that, then you have to. There's nowhere else to go. You're not going to get there. You're not going to outcompete all the other big health charities by doing exactly what they're doing. You have to find something different. You have to have an unique insight into people and what they want from charities or how to reach them, or else you're not going to get ahead. You're not going to stay ahead. And actually, what the innovation thing and what I'm talking about is a competitive advantage that's difficult and hard to do. It's hard to pull off. It's hard to sustain, but it's worth it because if you get it, it's hard for other people to copy. And the culture there doesn't support it. So unless you make it happen and you probably personally drive it, it won't happen.
There was a trend that I don't know if it went very far or not, maybe 10 years ago, where there was lots of jobs advertised as like head of innovation, job titles like that with innovation in it within different charities. Have you seen where that's worked really well, or what was your experience of seeing that work well within a charity?
My biggest clients have that.
Okay.
I have a client who's doubled in growth since 2020, from 10 million to 21 million. They have an innovation team.
Okay.
This our most willing client to spend money. Our second most, our biggest client, way bigger than everyone else, have a product development team. So when you get to the top levels, the charities who are growing, they get it. We talked about Dogs Trust and Women's Aid. They're the fast growing charities in Ireland. You know, they don't have the job titles, but they get the idea of trying new things. So it works. Now, you have to do it well. So just having someone there doesn't mean your team and you actually will take risks and you'll do it in the right way. The stuff I'm talking about, that building blocks approach, that like 50 post-it notes on a wall and you use them, that's our approach. So that's different. And I think there's a lack of methodology around research and innovation. Too much of it is, okay, you fail fast, fail more, do things that's fine.
Yeah.
But you have to have a methodology driving it. And the methodology it's basically science. Like, it's basically what scientists do.
Yeah.
Learn, observe, record, go again, test.
Yeah.
And I think the methodology is weak. Probably generally, yeah.
So what would be a great way for people to improve that within an organization?
I think it has to be something you alluded to earlier, like multi-team exercise. Call it an annual exercise where the product development team or innovation person is responsible for pulling together surprising learnings from all over the organization. The teams come together and collaboratively in some kind of breakout groups situation, come up with new ideas, put the ideas all on one board, vote on the best ones. Everyone's equal, everyone votes. You've got a sort of already a survey within the room or on the general public. If you have 20 people involved, the crowd will be wiser than one person.
Yeah.
When we do it, we try to get every year we try to get an alphabet of new ideas. So whatever we say, 40 ideas, we vote them so we have an A to Z, and A is our most exciting one, and we hopefully then pitch A, B, C, D, E, F, G to our clients. So that's and
work through them that way, and test them, like you said before. Test them then to see which ones stick.
Well, that's the whole goal. Then you have ideas, so at least then as an agency we can say, well, we have a deck of ideas. As an organization, if you're like, well, we've done our process and we have a list of ideas, and then you're looking for opportunities to test them. Just having a list of ideas is actually really kind of empowering and inspiring for the team, because you're like, well, these are there, they're in a deck, we've done them, and let's try them.